Hi, welcome to our virtual nature walk at Mary Beth Doyle, part 2. I'm so excited to show you some of the cool plants we have in the park. Right now, let's start with telling the difference between two woody vines that people get confused all the time. So this is Virginia creeper, and I can tell that it's Virginia creeper and not poison ivy, not only by the way the leaves look here, but also because of these little sticky feet. Virginia creeper has these little squiggly bits that have separated into lots of little squiggly bits. They branch out, and then there's these little round things. They kind of look like little suction cup pads, but they're actually just circles with an adhesive on the end of them, and that helps the vine to stick to the tree. And so the vine is sort of glued to the tree all along here, and that's how younger Virginia creeper vines will hang onto the tree. Also, their buds look pretty different from poison ivy. See how they have like these reddish buds? Hang on, like right here. Poison ivy buds are a tan color, but then once they start to leaf out, poison ivy leaves are like a deep maroon, whereas Virginia creepers are more like this pink color with some green mixed in with them. So that's how I tell Virginia creeper apart from poison ivy. Also, the bigger Virginia creeper vine is just over here, and you can see that the roots on this are kind of bigger. They're kind of thick, like similar to like angel hair pasta. They're not really thin and hairy like cobwebs or anything like that. These are, substantially thicker roots as compared to what poison ivy would have. This Virginia creeper is finally starting to leaf out. You can see that it has compound palmate leaves. So that means that all the leaflets come out from one point and they're not spread out along the length of a stem like a rachis. You can see that the leaves there's usually 5 of them, although sometimes you'll get a leaf that only has 3, and you might think, oh, this whole vine, they'll only have 3 leaves. You can still tell it apart from poison ivy because of the way the lobes are. So they're toothy, but they don't have lobes that look like a thumb sticking out on the side here. And you'll see some poison ivy later that has that. Also, just look at the roots again. See how these roots have these little suction cup feet that stick to the tree? They're not like those skinny little roots that have helped the poison ivy stick to the tree. So I tried to use a pocket microscope to help you guys see what Virginia creeper's adhesive pads look like super up close. So as you can see, these are the little pads that help them stick to the tree bark. Okay, here's poison ivy. So poison ivy has little skinny roots that help it attach to the tree. It doesn't have any suction cup feet, no suction cup of feet with adhesive, no circular little pads, just real skinny roots. They're not going to get much thicker than this. You won't find any thick roots like angel hair spaghetti size on poison ivy. You can see the leaves right now, especially in the spring. They are a deep maroon color and they're kind of glossy and shiny. They're really beautiful. And when they're really small like this, often you won't be able to see the lobes on them. But as they get bigger, maybe you can. Like this one's starting to get some lobes. See how the outside leaves, the outside leaflets have like a thumb on them? And then the middle leaflet is starting to get its lobes. You can see it's going to have some lobes there and there. But yeah, you normally will see one thumb like that on each of the outside leaves. And then the middle leaf will have 2 thumbs together, like, here. Like this. Sorry if this is cut weird. I'm trying to hold my phone with my face. Yeah, so the middle leaf will have like this. 2 leaflets, or 1 leaflet with 2 thumbs, outside leaflets, 1 thumb, middle leaflet, outside leaflets. And then you can see the outside leaflets, the 2 on the outside, are down a little bit on the stem, a little bit lower on the stem than the middle one. So this is poison ivy. Don't touch it. It has urushiol, which is a compound that gives a lot of people an allergic reaction, and it's really hard to get out once you get this chemical stuck to you. Once you get this chemical on. So this poison ivy has a compound called urushiol, which causes an allergic reaction in a lot of people. and it's an oil, and if you get it on your skin, your clothing, any sort of gear or tools, you need to wash it off with soap or it will stay on there for a really long time. It doesn't break down very quickly, so you can't just be like, oh, I haven't used this in 6 months, it's probably fine. No, if there was poison ivy on it 6 months ago, it's probably still there. You might not be allergic enough to react to it, but some people will be, and it's not too difficult to spread poison ivy from yourself to somebody else who is allergic to it. So make sure to wash anything that may have come into contact with poison ivy, including your dogs. Dawn dish soap works really well. You can buy other special soaps to remove poison ivy oils. Technu is made with a deodorized mineral spirits. Mineral spirits itself can be good for cleaning tools and stuff where odor and the solvent properties of that isn't a problem. But yeah. Poison ivy is a native plant that belongs in our woodlands, and its fruit is actually very helpful for birds who are migrating, and it doesn't typically cause an allergic reaction in non-human animals. Maybe like on your dog's belly where there's not much fur, it could get a reaction, but most animals don't have any problem with poison ivy, and it's actually very helpful for the birds. So we leave it unless it's causing a big problem for people. This is a super duper close-up view of the root hairs on poison ivy. You can see that they are sticking to the tree. I guess they're not technically root hairs. They're skinny roots that look like hairs, but they're not technically what we would call root hairs botanically. But they're pretty skinny, just like a hair, and this is how the poison ivy holds itself onto the tree. Just using its little roots. There's no little sticky suction cup pads or anything. Just these little hairy roots. This is garlic mustard. This is a horrible invasive plant. It would be awesome if a bunch of people went out in the woods, learned to identify garlic mustard, and worked on pulling it. So garlic mustard at the base is going to have leaves that are kind of rounded, and they have wavy edges to them, and their veins are really depressed into the leaf. They kind of give it like a lacy appearance. And then when it gets older, which all of it should be doing by now, it starts to bolt upwards and makes a tall stem. And then the leaves at the top of the stem are much more heart-shaped. See how they have this pointed tip to them? This is called a drip tip. It helps water fall off the leaf easily. And then the margins are a lot toothier. Instead of rounded teeth, they're like pointier teeth. The flowers at the top are white, and they have 4 petals. And yeah, those are garlic mustard flowers. They are broccoli relatives, and so they have a very similar look to the buds, and the flowers, if you're familiar with growing broccoli. And the leaves, if you crush them and smell them, they smell really garlicky and mustardy, and that's because they're in the mustard family. Now, the reason why garlic mustard is so insidious compared to the other invasives, like Dame's Rocket and Bittercress, is that garlic mustard releases a chemical from its roots that kills mycorrhizae. So they don't need it. They don't need mycorrhizae to survive. They do better if they can damage all the plants around them that are native and that depend on that mycorrhizae. And so if they can release enough of that chemical, the allelopathic chemical, into the soil around them, they can end up killing off a lot of the native plants nearby, a lot of those spring ephemerals. They can even damage oak trees if you get a big enough patch of garlic mustard killing off the mycorrhizae, because those oak trees and those spring ephemerals, they really depend on that mycorrhizae. When you pull garlic mustard, you want to grab it by the base, and you think this is the base? No, the base is actually over here. So here's where the plant made its base, but its root is actually out of the ground a fair bit, and then its root goes over here. And you want to slowly wiggle the plant out of the ground and try to get the whole root. If you don't get the whole root, it's going to grow back next year, and you're going to have to do the same thing again. So get the whole plant, kill it for good by pulling the whole plant, and then you can just Either if you're just in the woods doing this and you don't have a bag with you, you can hang them up someplace where they are not going to be able to get water and reproduce and grow back. So hang it off another tree like that, and that should be done. That should be done for. Just in case, especially if the flowers are a little more mature and they're starting to turn into seed pods, just rip the flowers off too. Rip those off. Throw those on the ground somewhere. You can also just leave a bundle of them on the trail where they'll get trampled and they'll dry out right there. Be careful when you're pulling garlic mustard that you don't accidentally get something like a violet. Violets, yeah, they have sort of heart-shaped leaves too, and they have little wavy teeth on them. This is a pretty yellow violet instead of our normal common blue violet. But yeah, violets, they're pretty much, their basal leaves are they're gonna have more basal leaves that are heart-shaped like this. The common blue violets at least. And then they don't smell like mustard or like garlic when you pull them and when you crush their leaf. And when you pull a violet out of the ground, their roots are like bulbous and lumpy, and they look very different from garlic mustard roots. They don't have like this crooked tap root that garlic mustard has. See how smooth this is? It's not like bulbous and lumpy like the violet would be. So most violets will have that. And then most of our violets this time of year actually have flowers on them. So if you see the flowers, that's an obvious sign that that's not garlic mustard. So look and see what parts of plants are attached to their leaves and make sure you're pulling the right thing. Yeah. Also, a funny thing I noticed about violets is, so if you take a violet leaf and you break the stem, there's like a string. See? There's like a string in the middle. I've never seen that with garlic mustard or anything like that. Yeah, it's like a little fleshy string. I don't know why, but you can use that to help you identify violets. This is buckthorn. Mary Beth Doyle used to look like a lot of it used to look like this, just like dense thicket of buckthorn. But some of our volunteers, especially Mark Charles, some of our volunteers have been working for the past 2 decades to restore Mary Beth Doyle, and now we have these beautiful open woodlands where our native plants can grow. So a terrible invasive, buckthorn, is threatening our forests. It's a medium-sized tree that comes from Scandinavia, and it was brought over here for ornamental purposes, believe it or not. It's fast-growing, it's large thorns. People like to use it as a hedge, like an intimidating barrier. So when working with and around buckthorn, watch out for the thorns, wear leather gloves. I've seen many buckthorn pokes get infected, especially if the tip of the thorn breaks off in your body. The thorns often come out from, like in between 2 buds at the end of a twig, and sometimes on a more mature tree just out of a stem somewhere. And they're pretty long. They can get like yay big. And yeah, they're nasty. You do not want to get stabbed by a buckthorn thorn. But a buckthorn can really turn a diverse forest into a monoculture fairly quickly because it reproduces quickly and it's shade tolerant. So it creates so much shade that other plants can't grow underneath. And then it's also allelopathic, like garlic mustard. So it produces a chemical that hurts the plants around it, specifically by reducing the germination rates in the seeds. One study found that the chemical that it does, the elodin, the allelopathic chemical, it can reduce reproductive success in amphibians. So that's another reason you don't want it, especially in a park like this that has some gorgeous wetlands. Buckthorn has male trees that make pollen and female trees that make the black berries, which will make you sick if you eat them. Birds that eat buckthorn berries can get dehydrated from the cathartic effects of them. So if you're controlling buckthorn on your property, you might want to start with the female trees so you don't have so many berries spreading seeds. I have found my favorite forest understory tree. This is a musclewood, unmistakable. This bark is smooth like a beech tree. Some people call it blue beech. And it's got this fluting on it and the smooth bark that really makes it feel like a mussel. And I just think it's so cool. I love to hug these trees and hold on to their trunks. These are a pretty slow-growing, really dense, hard-wooded tree, and they hang out in the understory. They don't get too much bigger than the sky. I don't know, 15, 20 feet tall is probably what they would do maximum. and they have cool little seed pods that make fruit, or little nuts that feed birds and mammals, and I think their leaves are pretty cute too. They're just starting to leaf out. Did you know that Mary Beth Doyle actually has a cute little strip of prairie? It's right by the entrance on Packard Road, and it has our main native grasses for our prairies, including big bluestem and Indian grass, although they're dormant right now. There's also a lot of beautiful wildflowers, especially in late summer when the show really takes off. So I'll see if I can find some of the dead seed heads and leftover flowers for you to learn how to identify even when they're not in bloom. These cute little pin cushions are the old seed heads of our beautiful native bee balm called Monarda fistulosa, and I love it for its beautiful minty scent and its beautiful purple flowers. They look like little purple fireworks or little purple pin cushions, and they really paint a wet meadow or a prairie in a beautiful shade of lavender. Bees really go crazy for this plant, so plant it in your garden if you want to attract a lot of bees. There are a lot of cultivars that might be attractive to gardeners because they might have a more compact habit or different unique looking flowers, but studies have shown that the native genotype, the native variety, actually attracts pollinators the best and is actually the most useful to our native insects. Nativars, or cultivars of native plants, are still visited by native insects, but to a lesser extent. So if you can, get the native variety, and if you can't, get a cultivar. Both are good. So you know how in the summertime, especially in late summer, the sunny fields and prairies, even wet meadows, they're all just awash with yellow flowers, and they look really beautiful. That's mainly due to goldenrod. Goldenrod is a genus of plants called solidago, and we have a bunch of different species here in Michigan, and they can grow in the forest, they can grow in the prairies. We have goldenrod for just about every ecotype around here, and I think they're really cool. They support a lot of insects with their pollen, which is how they have a lot of big sticky grains of pollen that are helpful food for pollinators. And I think that people give this plant a bad rap because they see all these big, bright, beautiful yellow flowers just as their seasonal allergies are starting to get real bad. And they assume that this yellow plant with lots of pollen is the culprit. But the pollen is actually not airborne at all. It's big grains, they're really sticky, and they stick to the pollinators, so the bees fly from one plant to another and other pollinators, and that's how the pollen gets from plant to plant. It's not a wind-pollinated plant, so it's not relying on its pollen blowing away in the wind and hopefully getting on another plant and pollinating it, but possibly also irritating your sinuses. Goldenrod doesn't do that. Goldenrod is a wonderful plant that is not the culprit for most people's seasonal allergies. The problem is that ragweed blooms at the same time, and ragweed has silly little flowers that you can't really see from afar. They're green, they're small, they don't really look like flowers until you get up close. And so those produce a ton of pollen, and it just goes all over the place in the wind, and people's allergies go crazy, and then people see all these beautiful yellow goldenrod flowers, and they think, oh, it's the goldenrod that's making my allergies bad. And I've even seen goldenrod pictures on allergy pills at the drugstore. So don't misunderstand goldenrod. It's a gorgeous plant to have in your yard, to have in your native areas, natural areas. It's a gorgeous plant to have in your yard, to have in your natural areas. I definitely recommend finding out which type of goldenrod would work best for you and whatever garden you're planting, because I think it can be a great addition to a lot of different situations. Here we have a redbud tree that's just starting to put buds out. The buds come right off the twigs, so they look like they're just coming right on at the stick. And this tree is a wonderful native plant that has beautiful flowers in early spring before most of the trees have put their leaves out, so you can really see them. They really paint the landscape a beautiful shade of purple. And the leaves, when they do come out, are beautiful heart-shaped leaves, and then the seed pods are actually like these pea pod shaped, because this plant is actually part of the pea pod family. So this is a great understory tree that you can plant in the shade. I would really recommend planting it in your yard somewhere. Here's a cute little tree I'm rather fond of. This is prickly ash, and it has a long history of medicinal use and helping humans out with a lot of different ailments. I don't recommend self-medicating with things you find in the woods. It's much better to go talk to your doctor about things, but it's interesting to learn about the history of ethnobotany and the way humans use plants that are native to our area. This plant in particular was used for toothaches and other various things. They would collect the fruits, which are these little red capsules. They're sort of like little red berries, and the hull on them, like the rind, is sort of has glands on it like a citrus fruit would, like you know how like an orange would have those little glands with fragrant oils in them. This is the same thing but very tiny and red, and those oils were made into tinctures that you could I don't know, like put on a cotton swab, stick in your mouth for a toothache or various things like that. But again, I don't recommend self-medicating with plants you find in the woods. This is a great little understory tree to have in a forest. It's used by a lot of bugs. Let me think. The spicebush swallowtail, I believe, uses this as its host plant. So if you're a fan of butterflies, you might want to consider having this plant in your yard. It does have these cute little prickly spines on it, so if you are looking for a plant that you can, you know, really get up close and personal with and touch a lot, this might not be the best plant for you. Thank you for joining me for Natural Area Preservation's first ever virtual nature walk. I had a lot of fun going out into the woods to see all these cool plants. I hope you were able to get out into our parks and enjoy them as well. Stay safe and healthy, everyone, and I hope to see you in person at one of our events when the city deems it safe for us to begin having in-person volunteer events again.